You know, for the absolute longest, I was the nice guy, because I thought that it was the right thing to do, because I felt like it was the godly way to go about things, feel like everybody deserves grace, love, peace, harmony, and all the other stuff that happens on the spiritual path that a lot of us goes on. But then I noticed over time that it really started draining me. It started killing me inside. And I need to just get this type of stuff off my chest. It really started from childhood, growing up in a single parent household. I got used to seeing women. I got used to seeing, the things that they go through behind closed doors, and typically only seeing that side of the equation. So I gained somewhat of a soft spot or a sympathy towards the women in my life. Now, what happened, of course, just a whole bunch of ruined relationships, things not working, just typical things that happen in today's dating culture because people don't seem to appreciate genuineness. But no matter how many times I got cheated on, left, abused, disrespected in the fullest regard, something in me still told me like, hey, be nice, be positive. And I created this like toxic attachment to people and places because it's like, yo, I should cut you off. You shouldn't be in my life. What you're doing is really messed up, effed up, But I'm going to be nice to you because of all this other stuff. When in reality, I should have just been like, no, you're toxic. I'm going to remove myself. However you feel about it is however you feel. I have this tendency of feeling responsible for other people's feelings and feeling responsible for other people's emotions while also getting heavily invested. I'm very emotional. I'm very passionate. This is why things like situationships and, casual friendships and relationships don't typically work for me because I feel too much. I'm too deep. I'm too passionate to do those type of things. But on and on, no matter how many failed relationships I went through and failed friendships, I just kept being nice. And then I started seeing it happen in my, male friendships as well too. When you're too nice, when people feel like they can do and say anything, disrespect or a lack of respect happens. You feel me? And a lot of the times it's not even somebody disrespecting us. It's them not respecting something. It's the lack of respect for said area or said thing that shows an ultimate level of disrespect in my eyes. It started happening a lot once I started getting into things like business, being nice all the time, being, hey, fun, it's cool, whatever the case may be, and not really standing on principle, led to people not paying me, led to people, delaying payments, led to people, in other words, attempting to use me if they could get away with it, you feel me? And that's what happened for a good deal of my career, at least in my photography. I was just running into people, I was dealing with celebrities because of the bloodline, the legacy that I come from. So everybody that I was dealing with was of, some sort of celebrity or, status, in other words. So I automatically took that nice guy approach with them. I felt like I had to be nice to these people when in reality I don't. Something I've been learning on this path is celebrity or not, rich or not, they're still human. I've been seeing people that people praise, musical, icons in a way, who behind closed doors, they're not the best of people. And it took me stepping back and really realizing that a lot of the people that I was surrounded by was opportunistic. And when you're a nice guy, takers notice that and they take advantage of that. They know that you're probably going to give them what they want. They're probably going to be able to do what they want and get away with it. So they take advantage of it. And over time, it eats at your spirit because it definitely ate at mine. And it started to make me wonder, is there something wrong with me? What's going on? Because I was just so depleted. This last person that I was, talking to, rather, because I wouldn't even say that I was dating this person, right? She told me something outlandish, right? How she was still in love with her ex and she would prayed for him and all this other type of stuff, right? I took a complete step back. I didn't try asking any questions. I didn't try arguing anything. I just stopped contacting her. You feel me? Because I'm okay. Clearly, you want something else in this lifetime, and then the nice guy in me wanted to Stay, keep talking, try to find a resolution to something that I knew had no resolution. And I'm happy in a chapter where I'm growing out of that, right? Because a lot of the times when you grew up being the nice guy or a nice person, you will feel guilty for doing what's right. You will do the right thing and feel like the villain because you're not being nice. You see, everybody wants us to be nice because being nice is beneficial to whoever's on the receiving end of it. But when you start moving from principle, morals, integrity, niceness isn't always on the table. Sometimes it's black and white, wrong or right. And realizing that and taking that in has brought me so much, focus and clarity back into my life. Things aren't throwing me off as much as they used to. I don't feel like there's so many distractions. I started deleting social media. I haven't been scrolling. I haven't been on the doom scroll. So many different ideas have been coming. Last night I tried to move my setup. Whole table broke. Everything, all my expensive stuff that was on top of it hit the floor. I had to reorganize everything. I had to go through what I had. And long and behold, my setup now looks better than what it was before. It's kind of crazy when you ask God to make room, when you ask God to make space, when you ask God to elevate and innovate your life, because that's essentially what I was doing. Don't be surprised if destruction happens. That's what that told me. He was like, I walked into my room. I want a new setup. I want a content room. How do I make this happen? I started moving the desk, asked my sister to help, and everything fell. And it took me a moment to kind of sit with it. Why did this just happen? Yes, I could go pay for another desk, but dang, this is like $200 desk. This wasn't no cheap desk. Wow. Okay. And then long and behold, I slept on it, woke up today, put on my creative hat, and now we're here. You see, God works in mysterious ways. That was God's way of saying, this needs to leave. You need space. This is going to be resolved. You aren't through off the path at all. But are you able to detach? Ooh, buddy, something I wrote down in my journal earlier today. What keeps a lot of people stuck in this lifetime is their lack of ability to detach. To detach from what it was. That's what keeps people stuck. Being overly attached to what was. Once you release the attachment to whatever that identity, whatever the situation, whatever the idea, perspective, belief, whatever the case may be, once you detach, growth, change, etc. is inevitable. The things that hurt us the most in this lifetime are the things that we're attached to. If your life is hurting you, you've attached your life to something that happened, something that you heard, something that you saw, something that we experienced. For me, it was that single parent household, and that overly nurturing and caring for the woman because I saw them being, at a deficit from the start, identifying what those things are, then making, conscious effort to realign your vision, realign your perspective, realign where you're going in this lifetime. It's not easy. I'm telling you, it's not easy. But it's probably going to be the best thing that you ever do when you finally realize that this life is yours. This life is for the taking. You can do what you please, but you have to detach from the things that you say is hurting you. You can't hold, you know what this reminds me of? That visualization, of somebody like trying to hold on to like a cliff or like hold on to somebody's hand, and then they're like, oh my God, this is hurting me, right? And like their hand is starting to like rip and stuff like that because they're holding on to like spikes or something like that, when all they had to do was let go, and it was only like a 1 foot drop underneath them. They could have simply just went back on their feet, but they were so afraid and they were so attached to the circumstance that they were at before that they sat there and suffered when all they had to do was let go. And you can simply move on. And that's what life is teaching me. It's a balance. I'm learning a lot. God is teaching me a lot. But it's all in the bubble of mindfulness and spiritual awareness. Noticing when things happen in your life. What is this teaching me? How is this getting me to the next step? And am I moving from integrity? Am I moving from principle? Am I moving from love? If you're analyzing all of those things actively, it's almost a sure way you're going to move forward. At least in your thinking, at least in your spirit. There's no way you don't. So, with that being said, I love you guys. I love you guys. I love you guys. And I will see you guys in the next episode.